Well, anyone looking to leave OpenAI has a home at Microsoft. That's at least according to the tech giant's chief technology officer. Nearly all of OpenAI's employees are threatening to now leave the company after that surprise ousting of OpenAI CEO Sam Altman plunged the AI startup into chaos. So the question is there a way for the tech company to get back on solid footing? For more on this, let's bring in Gary Marcus, founder of Robust.AI and Geometric AI, joining us today. Gary, it's really great to get your perspective today. We should point out that you testified on the Hill alongside Sam Altman earlier this year. It feels like this has really opened up the doors to this divide we have seen debate between safety first and the so-called techno optimists. How have you been processing the developments over the last several days?
I think most people are looking at it wrong. I think most people are thinking of this as a big corporation is about to lose a lot of money. But as you in your coverage just showed a few minutes ago, there's really a nonprofit at the top of it all. And it started with a nonprofit that Elon Musk and some other people put together. And it's really about the mission of the company. And the board, I think everybody's portraying as foolish, but I think the board is trying to keep to that mission. We have to remember that the board doesn't have a stake in this, of an economic stake. They're just supposed to keep the nonprofit doing what it's supposed to do. So you have a lot of people that are very upset that have a lot of money at stake. And you have some people that are hated but are doing what they think is the right thing. Unfortunately, they're probably bound by NDAs, and so we don't know exactly what transpired. But I think we should be giving them a bit more benefit of the doubt than we have. And yes, this absolutely is in part about safety and where AI is going versus how we can profit over it and so forth. But there's also a claim that the board made that there was some kind of lack of candor, and we don't really understand what they were referring to on that.
So to your point, a lot of this still needs to be reported out. We haven't heard directly from the board on why exactly they chose to oust Sam Altman, but I wonder where you think this is going to take the conversation about regulation now that concerns about the safety of AI are right back in the forefront.
I think the absolutely clear implication from this is we cannot trust the companies to self-regulate. If companies can't even regulate themselves, can't govern themselves, how can we expect that they're going to have our best interest? I mean, this shows the huge tension between making money and safety. And it shows that we can't necessarily trust that the companies are going to sort this out. So I think it's a big wake-up call. Right now, the EU, as we speak, is trying to sort out their AI Act. And there is an argument for not governing foundation models, generative AI at all. And I think it's a foolish argument. I certainly hope that we will take this moment to realize that we can't trust the companies on their own, that the government has to step in to make sure that the companies look out for the human interest here.
And Gary, something else that will pique regulators' interest, essentially this is an acquisition without an acquisition, given the amount of knowledge that Altman has that he's now bringing to Microsoft. What will you be watching on that front? Is that something that perhaps some of these companies should be aware of, bracing for potential red flags here?
So, I mean, there are questions about how much IP might be ported over. There might be lawsuits about that, in addition to all the lawsuits that you just mentioned before. I think one of the big questions is about Altman himself. He talked a really big game about safe AI, responsible AI, regulation, and so forth when he was at OpenAI, where that's the mission. Now he's going to be at Microsoft, where that's not the mission. Does he still care about those things? Is he going to set up what he does to focus on safe AI and AI that's beneficial to humanity? Or is he going to spend his time, making Microsoft word better? We really don't know. It's a big referendum in a way on Altman and whether the things that he's been saying are sincere or not.
And that's certainly something that we've already seen the EU trying to make moves to really, protect some of these companies, protect people's data as they try and sort of catch up with the advances that we're still seeing with generative AI and with AI itself. What sort of domino effect do you think could we potentially be looking at?
There's all kinds of domino effects. So number one is you might suddenly have a diaspora of engineers, right? So there are only so many engineers in the world who know how to make these systems. These systems can be used for good or for evil. People who make misinformation, for example, love these systems. So you have all of these people. Maybe they'll all go to Microsoft as promised. Maybe they won't. Maybe they'll go to all different kinds of places. Maybe bad actors will recruit them. So you have this diaspora of engineers that itself is going to be pretty interesting. You have a reshuffling. So everybody was using OpenAI's products and probably won't anymore. So it's probably good for all of the competitors to OpenAI, but we really can't, I think, anticipate all of those domino effects on the business side, and also like where this does leave people in terms of how they think about AI safety, how important they think it is. Do they still care? Do they care more because they realize that we can't really count on even the internal governance structures of the companies? You know, it's a little hard to tell. But somebody posted something this morning saying AI winter is coming, and I posted back and I said, I don't know about AI winter, but the weather's going to get really weird.
What does that mean?
I mean, it means there's just all kinds of unpredictable consequences. So, I mean, like what we've seen from climate change is not just that things have gotten warmer, but also that there are all kinds of unpredictable things, ranging from fires to, weird swings maybe of cold weather too. Like equilibrium is disrupted, I think, in climate change. And the equilibrium here has been totally disrupted. And when that happens, you just can't really know all the consequences. Like, I'm sure that a whole bunch of people will move around. I'm sure that there'll be more discussion around AI safety. I think a lot of new companies will be formed, but I'm not certain where all this is going to lead. And let me just say one other thing, which I think is really interesting, which is people were valuing OpenAI at $86 billion. I've always thought that was a mistake. I think the technology is actually far from ready for prime time. The amount of money being made so far is relatively small. It's really interesting that most of the engineers seem to be willing to leave whatever OpenAI allegedly had behind. Maybe this stuff isn't really as promising as people thought. I could foresee a crash of it all, of the valuations of it all. People suddenly realizing, hey, maybe there wasn't that much to it. Maybe people don't really know how to make it reliable. So that's another, wild consequence that could come out of this.
Gary, how long until regulators do you think step in? I mean, to the broader point here, are there any levers they can actually pull in this current environment?
I mean, there are lots of things regulators could do. So, for example, I love the Hawley-Blumenthal bill, which is actually very much like what I told them when I sat in the Senate next to Sam Altman talking to them, which includes things like pre-deployment licensing and making sure that things have the benefits that outweigh the risks. So we could have some constraints on what you can put to market if you put it at wide scale. So if Microsoft wants to release some new product to 100 million customers, we should have some argument from them that it's going to be safe. So that was one thing I emphasized, and Hawley and Blumenthal did as well. And another is auditing after things are released. So at least the scientific community should be able to go in and say, what kind of data did you use? How biased are your systems? What kinds of errors are they making? Are they safe? If we so-called red team them, what kinds of problems might happen? So I think that the scientific community needs to be more empowered to look at these systems. The Hawley and Blumenthal bill does that. We need more transparency around the data that systems are trained on so that we can understand what they're doing with respect to copyright and bias and how they work. A lot of the EU AI Act was intended to do some of that. Now that's very much in flux just over the last week because some of the European companies really don't want to be constrained in what they do. And I hope the EU will be able to fight that.
It's been a fascinating discussion. I appreciate you taking the time to join us this morning. Gary Marcus, founder of Robust.AI and Geometric AI. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.